Kim Collison, thank you very much for talking to RunUltra. Congratulations on breaking the 24-hour Munro record. I believe this was set in 2017 by Jim Mann and last year by Sasha Chapelin, is that right? With the help of Ali Mason. And you went out and got one more Munro than them, breaking the record with 33 in total. I'm fascinated. I've been doing some research on your routes. I don't know how much they've varied with the original record from 1988. But could you tell us a little bit about your route and why you chose it?
For me, it was kind of the logical next top on what Sasha and Ali had done last year. And they obviously, when Jim moved it to the Cairngorms as a record, being a longer route but with less climb, and then by getting the 30th top, he kind of decided to cut down to the finish and celebrate his success, and make sure he had the record. But he still had a fair chunk of time spare. So it became obvious that there was still some other tops in the Cairngorms that were possible. And there was kind of three that were identified that probably could be possible in that 24 hours if you had a good run. So obviously Sasha and Ali set off for a 32 round. And then when they finished with almost 50 minutes to spare, and I was kind of watching their talk this winter thinking, well, maybe that's one for me. You know, it's on that edge of possibility. You know, you do the sort of maths, you look at the extra distance involved in the height gain, you think about 50 minutes to an hour for that extra top. So, you know, it's right on that edge of, okay, if you put everything together and run as quick as them, then it's not.
Are you then basing everything on running the same pace as them? Or are you also thinking, right, well, I also need to do a faster pace, which will give me a bigger leeway for that last top?
No, I was kind of basing it on the fact that, okay, they've come along, they're really quick runners. But I thought, okay, they're not as experienced. This is their first big ultra at this distance. So hopefully that some of my knowledge and experience of how to run these, how to suffer might just come into play. So I thought, okay, maybe I'm not quite as quick as Sasha on a kind of FE5, but I know I can run long and sustain a high pace for a long time. So I thought, okay, I think I can match their splits. And I think maybe if I can find some efficiency savings through stops and keep moving, that I could find those few minutes to add that extra top. So I didn't think it was, I thought, yes, it's hard, but achievable. So it's kind of making those calculations in my head to give it a go.
Yeah. No, interesting. So you said that it was moved to the Cairngorms to make it a longer with less elevation. Is that better overall, do you think? Or because it also means you've got to be able to run 100 miles, which is a feat in itself.
Yeah, I guess it just comes down to the average speed that you need to keep to get as many tops. You put more climb in, it slows your average speed down, so you can't go as far. So it's all a element of maths, really, of how much climb and how much distance, and what does that equate to average speed overall. I guess there's an element of terrain as well. Potentially there's more runnable sections in the Cairngorms that allow you to run a higher, faster pace for a section of it than perhaps where it was up in Glen Affric,
right.
where there was a lot more climb and elevation. But I think there's possibilities for someone that's a really strong climber to take it back up that direction possibly and see if they could add an extra one in that area. I'm not too sure because I haven't looked at it in too much detail.
Do you think it could be improved somehow, or even if it's another completely separate area? Do you think someone can come out there and get 34 or 35?
Well, it's obviously going to be a very, very good run now as well to add that top. I think it's possible. There's various options in the Cairngorms potentially, but they're all quite a chunk of time to add that top on. So you will have to run quicker than me and quicker than Sasha did to do that, which is not impossible. There are athletes out there that can do that. It's just whether you can get the order right. I think it will take more practice working out splits and getting it right on the first time, or getting it right after several attempts. Potentially someone can run what I did quicker. I think that is also an option.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And any more in the offing? Are you tempted to come down and barge in on these two that are constantly doing the Pennine Way?
Well, I guess the thoughts has to pass your head in the sense you go, okay, I've done the Paddy, the 24-hour record. Do I extend my distance? Do I try and push myself further and challenge those limits? Because I am about challenge and reward and finding where that line is. The Pennine Way does intrigue me, and to see, can I do it over 58 hours? Who knows? I'm undecided. It is in the back of my mind.
One for the future.
One for the future, potentially.
What I think you were thinking about doing the Dragon's Back. Now that you've sort of done these 24-hour rounds, is there a preference between racing and records, or do you think will you look forward to going back to a sort of an old-fashioned race again?
Oh no, I'm really excited to go back to doing a race. It's been for me so long because I have ended up focusing on the records and prioritizing those because they've given me the most reward of recent times. But there's nothing like that excitement of the neck and neck competition, the racing, knowing that you're not directly in control of what someone else does, and that community spirit of a shared journey. So that's something that excites me about the Dragon's Back is the journey element and sharing it with others, as well as the natural thrill of racing, and that you get that adrenaline from it as well, don't you? That you don't necessarily in a record.
Yes, I think I've always thought, well, personally speaking, I think racing against someone else kind of pushes you that little bit more than perhaps you would do just against a clock or yourself.
Yes.
But you're a coach as well, aren't you? Do you have any advice for anyone considering tackling any of these rounds?
Yeah. First thing is I think a lot of people undervalue training the stomach, and actually it is a really big eating contest. If you can train your stomach to absorb more calories, more carbs, then you've got more fuel to maintain a higher intensity. If you want to push your body and challenge yourself and get quicker times, then you might need to be using those fuel resources. So I think actually training for me, my stomach has really helped. I think for the big rounds, a large proportion of it is actually hiking. To really practice and hone your power hiking technique, because a huge percentage of the round and race is going uphill and walking. So actually practicing that and getting really good at that as a part of ultras and rounds is really important. Even at the elite level, we're hiking a lot of it as well.
I thought you ran up all the mountains.
No. Not over this distance.
Oh, excellent. Is there anything abroad that you fancy, you got your eye on?
I mean, the next iconic thing probably for me would be Tour de Gent eventually. I'm getting drawn into longer, bigger ultras. And I'm missing that sense of I guess, what is it, adventure and journey, where I've come from an adventure racing background where I've done several multi-day events, and with that sleep deprivation and, where you find yourself in the darkest holes and you've got to dig yourself out of them. Whereas I see these 24-hour ones and the rounds for me as more of a performance element.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that would shift it more into the adventure realm for me. That sense of I'm there to, can I complete it, rather than can I do a time?
Yeah.
And that's what will probably draw me to that. As I'm into the spine this year as well. So both of those tick that box for me.
The summer or the winter?
The winter.
Oh, cool. Okay, excellent. Oh, well, that'll be a good recce then, won't it? What about navigation? As you just said, you come from a sort of adventure background. Have you got any tips for people sort of navigating whilst racing that they can do without falling over whilst reading a map?
I guess start to notice things. I think the more you look up and pick up landmarks, whether they're big landmarks, small landmarks, and then if you can pick up those and then try and visualize those into a 2D, and then try and do it vice versa as well. Okay, that's a landmark on the map. What might it look like in real life? And it's kind of trying to train that visualization technique of what does 2D compared to 3D, and the map memory. So the more you can memorize and learn, the less time you need to spend looking at the map while running, which is important. Then the simple things of perhaps having a catching feature or a point where you're going to attack, so that you can run quickly to that attack point, be it a path junction or a hilltop, and that's where you've got to slow down and concentrate more. So a couple of things.
Oh, great. Yeah, no, absolutely. Doing a bit of Strava stalking. You seem to run a fairly modest mileage for an elite runner. How do you balance your running and training with your life on a day-to-day basis?
As a coach now, it's a lot easier. It's my full-time job is to, so I'm flexible now to balance the running and work and fit it around each other. So that has improved my recovery a lot, which is, I think, a key difference in the last few years, especially as I'm now becoming a veteran, a masters runner, that I think the recovery becomes most important. I've done years of endurance training. It's now trying to make sure I can maintain that speed as long as I can. So the balance has got better. When I was an outward bound instructor, it was early mornings, training to work, training back from work, overnight expeditions, and it was a very tiring passion,
yeah.
and took a lot to do. But when you have that joy and the rewards you get from it, you put the hours in. When you say modest, I would say there's definitely peaks and troughs. So I think that's the average if you're looking just at average mileage across the year, okay, then it is probably a bit modest. But you then take out the taper and the recovery, and some of the peak weeks at 90, 80 miles, 100 miles with 7,000-8,000 meters of ascent. So at times you train really hard, but then you've got to also be really fresh for the big event. So you've got to make sure that you get a good taper so that you can use that fitness for your event. I think more so for ultra distances than shorter trail races, where you probably would be maintaining a more constant mileage and having more speed elements into the training.
Okay.
To make sure that you get the right peaks and the right recovery, and do that on a year scale as well as a sort of a block scale.
Yes. Do you think it sort of the year scale mirrors the block scale, but just over a longer period in a way?
I think it's important to sort of kind of plan your year out to tackle different elements of fitness, so that you don't leave stuff behind. I think often as ultra runners, we can just end up aiming at lots of long miles, and then we go from event to event and just focusing on the most specific thing of training, which is perhaps long days in the mountains or long days on the coastal path, or and volume kind of overtakes quality. And then we have a race, say the Spine in the winter, another one in spring. And so we're always seem to get lost in training for that endurance, which as a new athlete, I think coming up is really important, because it helps bring up your floor and makes your aerobic fitness and gets you quick. But once you reach just that floor gets so high, I think you've got to remember to keep working on that ceiling. So taking opportunities or certain times of the year to really work on the speed elements and the high-end aerobic, just to keep your ceiling high or push it up, is important. So I think planning that into a yearly plan can be is good.
Cool. Do you have any training tips for those looking at their first ultra then, on top of what you've just mentioned? Presumably then it's raising their base.
Yeah, for the first ultra is being able to run consistent miles at an easy effort, so that you can consistently run, you say 5 days a week. And if you can get 5 days a week consistently, you might then also want to keep looking at the other end of the spectrum, your raw speed. So trying to train the fast twitch muscles. So using things like strides or hill strides or hill sprints, just to retain, so you don't lose those muscles, and it really helps with training your economy as well. So balancing those off can really help as a new ultra runner. I think learning how to hike, learning what foods you can eat, really important. Then start to work out what equipment is comfortable. Just trying to learn those basic things, what actually works for you and is going to not slow you down in an ultra.
Yeah.
And it's usually not how fit you are. It's all the other elements.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And your head, of course.
Your head is the biggest, one of the biggest ones. That ability to keep pushing and finding ways past problems.
No, there's some great tips there, I think, for some newbies. Finally, who is Kim Collison? What do you like to do when you're not running, or telling us how to run?
So I'm probably really boring, and I just think about running all the time. and if I'm not running, I'm probably eating and drinking coffee, or sitting out in the garden.
Well, you do live somewhere beautiful.
I do love to travel and adventure and journey places. That hasn't happened for the last couple of years, but that's the other passion. So hence why taking the opportunity to go up to Scotland and do the 24 as well is that ability to explore the Cairngorms National Park and see new mountain areas.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, fantastic. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Well, thank you for interviewing me.